Tyler Glass.
Nathan Allen.
Jason Allen.
Caden Smith.
The Compromise of 1850. Henry Clay's attempt to solve the territorial conflict between the free and the slave states.
Lexington Observer, January 29, 1850. Henry Clay's great patriotic mind is busy on the plan for the pacification on the country on the slavery question. Now, we are not informed as to the details of this plan, but we all know that it will be wise and just, and we trust that his great influence will enable him to bring about its adoption in Congress.
At the Capitol building, every aisle and looking corner is packed full. Today, Congress will meet and begin a debate that will last over 10 months and will, in fact, alter the course of American history. Henry Clay has just introduced his compromise to the Senate.
Senators, I thank you for your time today. In my opinion, this is the last thread that is keeping the fabric of the Union together, and I hope you will consider every aspect of this bill before voting. This compromise
Senator,
should be...
This is not a compromise at all. You have conceded the South nothing and given it all to the North. We should never even...
Senator, I do not think now's the time for discussion on this set of doctrines I've set on the table before you. Perhaps today and the following week will be suitable for a discussion. I know there are many things to take into consideration.
It's February 5th, and Henry Clay has just arrived at the Capitol building with his assistant, Carnell Van Arsdale. Clay has been suffering from a chronic cough all week and is very ill.
Mr. Clay, should you not defer your debate for the day? You need your rest.
My dear friend, I consider our country in danger. And if I can be in the means, in any measure, averting that danger, my health or my life is of little consequence. I've never before arisen to address an assembly so appalled, so oppressed, so anxious. There's a split in our country, a dreadful crevice. My goal is to calm violence and rage and allow reason once
Senator,
more to...
Again I say, it appears all the yielding in this compromise is on the Southern side. These resolutions have been held out to the South as bread, but are nothing but stone.
I agree. Henry Clay has submitted, for our consideration, a series of resolutions, dignified with the name of a compromise, but which, like most other compromises between the weak and the strong, is better than a cloak to hide from a public gaze. A hideous wrong.
Now, for the next couple days, the compromise continued to take massive amounts of criticism from the southern and the northern states.
Columbus State Journal, February 6, 1850. Mr. Clay's resolutions seem to find little favor in Ohio. These resolutions of Mr. Clay have produced a profound impression on the public mind. But there can be no mistaking the reception in Ohio. Our citizens do not endorse these resolutions.
One of the harshest criticisms Clay received was actually from a friend. Jefferson Davis, a senator from Mississippi, had wanted to debate Clay on the compromise since the day it was first presented to Congress. But Clay refused, saying, "I choose not to give way now."
It is February 13th, and although Clay has still not agreed to debate, Davis still has his turn to speak. So for the next 2 days, the man who Henry Clay had once considered his young friend destroyed the compromise.
Senators, these are dangerous doctrines, and Senator Clay has chosen to throw his influence into the scale of aggressive majority. I'm a plantation owner myself, and I believe, with slaves being property, that a slaveholder has the right to follow his property into any part of the United States.
After this brutal verbal attack, it seemed the compromise had begun to fail. But the Southern abuse was not over yet. The compromise was attacked from many other angles as well.
The North does not need land out west. And with the new territories, the North's land would consist of over 2 million square miles more than that of the South. This will also allow the North's population to mushroom, leaving the South's population to stagnate.
Finally, the South had a say, and now it's the North's turn to respond. Senators from all corners of the free states were ready to defend the compromise. it was finally the North's turn to fight.
Senators, slavery is prohibited in these territories now by Mexican law. That law is right and ought to remain in force.
Senator, I couldn't disagree with you anymore. As you have just said, it is a Mexican law. And as you might have noticed, we are not Mexican. We are the United States of America. And we ought to have our own laws.
Excuse me, Senator, but if I may say so myself, you've been mistaken from the beginning to the end.
Months later, the compromise had gone nowhere except backwards, and most of the time it had been spent arguing back and forth about topics brought up many times before. But although the topics stayed the same, the senators' emotions did not. The debates were getting more intense every day.
Senators, please, I urge you to consider these resolutions presented by Senator Clay. His compromise is wise and will serve this country well.
Listen to this old fool.
Excuse me, sir. Show some respect.
No, Senator, he is rambling on and on when he has no point whatsoever.
I've heard enough. Out of the way. Let the assassin fire. That pistol has been brought here to assassinate me.
I brought this pistol here to defend myself. So help me God. My intention was not to harm him.
Now with the debates raging on without end, Henry Clay had become more disheartened than ever. Yes, Mr. Clay, did you want to see me, sir?
Yes, Senator. Please have a seat. The compromise is beginning to fail. My supporters are thinning, and now even President Taylor is beginning to harden his heart against this compromise. I have brought you here to ask for your help. Will you take the helm of this great compromise?
Mr. Clay, I would be honored.
Now, this will require a huge amount of responsibility, but you're young and full of spirit, and I know you will do well.
Thank you, Mr. Clay. I will do my best.
On July 9th, after suffering from a violent attack of cholera, President Taylor died, and with him his opposing views of the compromise. While this became a huge blow to the country, it became a very important day for the compromise. With Millard Fillmore taking office, the President of the United States now had a very different view of Clay's compromise.
But 3 weeks later, senators such as James Pierce and William Dawson, who had not previously been involved with any of the debates, suddenly stepped forward with new, more popular ideas. With this attack against the compromise, it seemed that it finally failed.
But Stephen Douglas had a plan. His idea was to take each individual bill and vote them in one at a time. But if this failed, there would be no chance for the compromise to ever pass again.
September 19th, 1850. It is finally finished, and Henry Clay's great compromise has finally passed. Stephen Douglas was successful in making the Senate vote in the compromise piece by piece, even though unpopular California bill passed. Now this was a very significant bill because this was the first time the North succeeded the South's 15 states.
It was a job well done by Henry Clay, but also by Stephen Douglas. The final bills to the compromise were signed by Millard Fillmore that day, and for the time being, the United States remained one body.
For slaves trying to live lives in peace in the North, the Fugitive Slave Act was a disaster. As slave owners set out to capture the runaway slaves, many of them fled to Canada. This also increased the activities of the abolitionists and the Underground Railroad in the 1850s and 60s, and made the slavery issue a more serious topic in the capital.
Now the compromise did serve its purpose and did keep the Union intact, but only for a short amount of time. In the years to come, the slavery issue divided the people of America even further, and eventually the young nation split in two.
The Compromise of 1850. Henry Clay's attempt to solve the territorial conflict between the free and the slave states.